Hello and welcome to this episode of Beat Teacher Burnout. Today we're going to be talking about whether it's possible to work in a school and to put yourself and your family first. Is it possible to be vulnerable and strong? And what about trust? Where does that come in? So I am joined today by Harry Hastings. And Harry, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you and your story?
Well, nice to be here, Rowena, and thank you very much for asking me on. So my name is Harry, as you said, and by the end of this, maybe I'll have shared a few interesting parts of my story, which began back in 1992 at a little lovely school in Devon. And I worked there for a couple of years. I worked in Kenya for a couple of years. I then worked in the Dragon in Oxford, which was one of those great experiences previously. But I had a wonderful 7 years with some incredible pupils and staff and parents. And I'm in touch with lots of those in all those groups still so far, which is really lovely. And formative years and all that kind of stuff. And then moved to Sussex and then ended up having been at Cumnor House in Sussex for 8 glorious years. Went to Brighton College Prep as the head, which is again a great experience and good place to cut one's teeth as a head. And then latterly for 7 years, mostly happy years, as head of Ardingly College Prep School in Sussex. And as of the end of June last year, I stopped being a head after 99 terms in education, and it was time to do something different. And I had qualified as an executive coach back in 2021 through the wonderful IAPS and Charlie Warshawski training me. And I enjoyed it, and we had to give back whilst we were still serving heads to other heads who were new to the process. And there was this opportunity to do something different, to work for myself, to be an executive coach. And that's where I find myself now. And as of today, exactly today, which I think is the 24th, I've got 27 active clients. And there's always space for more because I think the sweet spot is 30. I've got up to there, but that's where we are. I bill myself now as the Sherpa. So I work for myself and I aim to support and challenge and guide other leaders or heads or deputy heads or people in the other world, or the real world, as I sometimes refer to it as. And it's been a really exciting and interesting part. But it's lovely to now be in charge of my time. So rather than time managing me, I now manage time because I'm now in my own space, in my own office, and in my own world. There we go. Was that okay?
Yeah. I'm really interested you say time managed you. So as a head, I suppose I opened with you wanting to talk about whether it's possible to put yourself and your family first and how you managed your time. What would you look back and see that you might do differently now that you've learned what you've learned and done what you've done?
Oh, that's a good coaching question. It would be, to be honest, not a great deal of difference. I would say the really important thing is just that knowing where the boundaries are. And if I was to look back on my time and managing my time better rather than time managing me, is that I would have taken, and I should have taken, less work home. And there's a phrase or rather a word that we've developed in our coaching sessions, which is enough. And it's knowing when what you've done is enough, whether that's enough looking at the emails, whether that's enough reading an article, whether it's enough writing a particular post or preparation for a particular event, and just saying, not that it's not the right standard, but it's good enough, as in it's going to be really good, but it's good enough, rather than having to keep seeking perfection. And the other thing is, just in terms of the meaning of the word enough, it's enough for now. So I can pick this up tomorrow. I can pick this up the next day. I can pick this up on Thursday, for example. And we, in our sessions, we actually spell the word enough. We go little lowercase e, big capital N, big capital O, and then lowercase UGH. So it is no. So knowing when to go. And so the emphasis is on the no within enough. And so that's where it would be, because I know, my family knows, I did do in the term time, because you are like, a head teacher and you've got, your deep experience within schools, but it's a little bit like as the teacher, the oil rigger, in that you're out and you're there, you're invested for 6 weeks, then you have a week off, then you've got 6 weeks, then you've got 3 weeks off, then you've got whatever it is, the term time. And it is relentless, but then you get July and August, it's amazing. But I look back on 99 terms, and particularly when children came along, I got 3 great children and a really supportive wife who's busy. She's a doctor. But I think at times, probably more times than at times, work came before the family just purely because I wanted to get things done. And I look back now and I think, had I had a coach in my ear going, have you had enough? Have you done enough? Is that good enough? I might have done things differently. And I probably would have done them probably better because I would have been probably fresher.
Okay, that's really interesting, isn't it? Do less, be fresher, and have a better mind. What about the other school staff, whatever level they're at, sort of shouting at you now, Harry, saying, but you don't understand. If I drop this, something's going to happen, or someone's going to criticize me, or I won't be ready for that meeting. What if they're saying the things I just can't drop?
I think as teachers now, the job's very different. And as head teachers now, as deputy heads now, it's very different to how it was. And I think, obviously, a situation in a school, a safeguarding issue trumps everything. So that's different. So let's just put that, that's a given. But then you've got within schools as well, you've got a tricky pastoral issue that's not quite up as in a safeguarding issue, or you've got a staff issue, or you've got a parent, perhaps, who's grumpy about something, or you've got a silly incident in the playground, or you've got you've got to prepare an assembly, or whatever it might be, or a lesson, or do some marking. I think the pressure on teachers is very different to how it used to be in terms of email, and I think that makes a difference. And I think also the way that we all work nowadays is we do things very quickly. And we do the classic multitasking, we're there doing lots of different jobs at the same time. How often do we go to meetings when people are answering emails while the meeting's going on, or they're on their phones doing something else while the meeting's going on? They're in the meeting, they're doing their other stuff, and they're still present, but they end up doing a number of things pretty well, whereas actually they could do one thing really well and then do the next thing really well in their own time. And I think maybe because we're all such good multitaskers, I mean, that's the classic within the lesson, isn't it? A teacher, you're there delivering a lesson, you're a massive multitasker, you're there, you're teaching this great content. Hopefully there's some brilliant learning going on. But the whole time you're doing behavior management, you're thinking about this, you're dealing with that. Someone comes to the door, you've got to think about all these different pans that are on the oven at the same time, and you're doing that one. Then you've got one particular child who needs help because they've got certain needs, and then there's someone else who needs help because they've got different needs. And then you notice the child in the corner who's not joining in. You think, oh, I wonder what that's going on. So we're with that, we're, as teachers, that's what we do. But I just wonder whether we, with more focus, doing one thing really well rather than, and total focus on that, rather than a number of things maybe less well. I hope that's answered your question. I think that was a slightly crazy answer, but I just think we're all, in whatever job we do, everyone's really busy and everyone gets very distracted, and the internet, for all it's brilliant and all the different things that come within that, have actually just created this world for us where we've got lots of different things coming into our mind. I know you're going to talk about working from home at some stage during this call, but that's one of the biggest things, is just to be really disciplined about just doing one thing well, then I'll do the next thing well, then I'll do the next thing well. And I just think that's managing time rather than time managing you.
Yeah, really, really important message today. Harry, have you ever had imposter syndrome as a leader?
I guess to a certain extent, but not in a bad way. I think I've had lots of self-doubt. I've had time. I mean, I always used to get nervous before an assembly. I did, whether it was necessary imposter syndrome, or I would get, and I know lots of people listen who, all 4 people listening to this, or however many people listening, will go, what? But I used to get less nervous before every lesson, even my last lesson. Because you want it to be good. And so if that's the imposter, I don't know. I think people always say, oh, I was very lucky. I was really lucky. I had lots of things, lots of stars aligning or things falling into place. I had a great time at Cumnor House in Sussex, doing a great job at a great school, or doing a good job, doing a job at a great school. And it was really rewarding with lots of great people and all that kind of stuff. And then I got headhunted for Brighton College Prep School. And I suppose there was a little bit of that then. Really? Me? Is this for the right person? And then I started, and I was head, and I was really green. And so did I ever get it? I think one has the doubts in one's heads. If that's quite the same thing, I'm not sure.
Okay.
But that's probably that. It's probably more confidence and vulnerability than necessary IS.
Yeah. I wonder if that made you a better leader. In terms of, you say you were in some really good schools. What, in your mind, makes a really good, healthy, lovely to work in school? What is it that underpins that?
Well, it goes back to, as you know, I'm a massive fan of Brené Brown, and it goes back to the whole team idea. And she has this wonderful framework to do with trust. And big fan, and I've read and listened to lots of what she said. And she is a big advocate, obviously, within her movement of trust. And if you can establish all that within schools, and she bases that on the framework called braving, I think that just turns the school somewhere where it otherwise may not have gone. And it's a mnemonic, and you've got B stands for boundaries. And so that's when you get everybody understands the boundaries, and that's children and staff and parents. I mean, within our school at both Ardingly and Brighton College Prep, we had an unofficial rule with parents, which was the Magnificent Seven email. And so therefore, if they wanted to make a statement or a moan or a complaint about the school, and they wanted to do it via email, if it was longer than 7 lines in their email, then they had to have a meeting, because we didn't want the great long lengthy emails. And it worked really well. And what it did is it established that boundary of don't just fire off some cross email because you understand to be cross, and everyone gets that. But it established a boundary that, okay, we're going to be cross, or we're going to be upset, or whatever it might be, but let's put it in an email, dear Mrs. Hicks, or dear Mr. Hastings, whatever it might be, slightly irritated by the, whatever it's the team selection, or the performance, the history teacher, whoever it might be, and can we have a chat about it? And so that means that the boundary has been set, that the agenda is there, and then we start really well. And so everyone goes, okay, so what's the issue? Okay, yeah, brilliant. What do you think about it? And it's the same with staff, and it's the same with pupils. And if you can all establish boundaries, and again, I didn't do this very well at Brighton College at first, and people listening to this will be laughing. It's just that whole thing of, it's the weekend. Let's have a weekend. Enough. And let's not WhatsApp each other. Enough. Apologies to people I used to do that to. People like Jane Ashford, sorry, Jane, and various others. But Lois, and Suzanne, the list goes on. But yeah, a big apology. But that's boundaries, and I stepped over that myself, and I know that now. But we do a lot of that within our coaching sessions at Sherpa. But then the R of braving stands for reliable, and everyone is really reliable. Everyone knows their role, and she talks within her braving mnemonic about reliability being a bit like the scales. So every time you get on the scales, it should always weigh the same thing. You don't put it on a different part. It says I'm 14 stone today. This can't be right. But it's the whole point that everybody is really reliable and knows their job and moves nicely into the A, which is accountability, that you're going to make mistakes. Fine, sorry, got the team selection wrong. Didn't get the books marked. Apologies. I was late for duty, but here's my reason. So you're accountable for it. And I think that's really good. Your question about what makes a good school. So those first 3, the boundaries, the reliability, and the accountability really work together to make a school. And then you get the V. And I thought the V was going to be vulnerability, but she has what's called, Brené Brown has the vault. And so that's creating this absolute safe space where it's highly confidential and someone will come and talk to you and someone will say something, but that stays in here and it doesn't become gossip. Schools can be great places for gossip, and schools can be great places for a story. And I say a story, sorry, a fact that becomes a story, that becomes a narrative, that then becomes a fact. And you go, whoa, okay. So that's not necessarily what exactly happened. And within our sessions, our coaching sessions, we talk about this brilliant thing. I don't know if you've heard of it, called the ladder of inference, the ladder of inference. And it's the idea of there's this pool of observable data at the bottom where all the facts are. And as you go further up the ladder, you get further away from the facts. And so eventually, though, the ladder gets thinner as well, but it ends up with this kind of narrative of what really happened. And that's dangerous. And that's very dangerous within schools, because someone then suddenly a fact has become a story, has become a narrative that then becomes true because people believe it, and then it's terrible gossip. And I think that's really important, that shouldn't exist. And that's about making things being highly confidential, but likewise keeping things, not gossiping about things, and also questioning data, questioning, what really happened. Okay. And looking at both sides. And so there's quite a lot there within, and you do that with the children, don't you? One of them, if any child falls out with another child, the first thing you go is, what did you do? What did you do? What did you really do? What did you really do? And what did you really say? What did you really hear? Blah, blah, blah. You get to the bottom of it all. And then the I stands for integrity, which is just an absolute given. So it does what it says on the tin. You're living out your values. They're not just, they're being lived rather than just being laminated on the walls. We at Ardilai had generous and adventurous and ingenious and curious, and they're very much my values. And you notice they ended us, because it's the idea that we're all in this together. It's us as a group, as a group together. And I think the more you can live your values, and every decision is being made, and you're just questioning. It's a bit, I suppose it's a bit like a policy. Policies exist to allow processes to happen and everything. Values should be the same. Again, within my coaching group, we always do, the second session is always traditionally about people setting their values. So they have their signposts, their lighthouse beams, their ways, their mantra, their writing in the stick of rock, as some bright person suggested the other day, which I thought was brilliant in one of our sessions. Thank you, Christian. And then the N is non-judgmental, which, people are often very judgy about something, and then, someone does something wrong and then they're never forgiven, and that doesn't help within schools, whether it's parents or whether it's teachers or it's people, everyone deserves a second and a third and a fourth chance. And then finally, I love the fact that her last letter of her mnemonic of braving is generous, because that's the way it should be. Everyone should just be generous to each other all the time, generous with listening, generous with time, generous with support, generous with, I have very generous processes of bursaries and all that, and that's the way it should be. So, helping those less fortunate, I was very fortunate at school, but there were some lovely bursaries that were given out. And I think if you put all those 7 words together, you get a great school.
Yeah.
But it all comes down to one thing, which is just trust. But trust has to be earned. It's not a given. And of course, if you look right in the middle of trust, what 2 letters have you got? You've got a U and an S, and that is wonderful. How brilliant is that? So it's all about us working together, appreciating each other, saying thank you at the right time, supporting each other, picking each other up when you go down, because that's going to happen. But also realizing that you can't be brilliant all the time. I think too many schools say you've got to be the best version of yourself. That's impossible. And I think that's wrong. We used to have this thing about being all you can be. So the idea that some days you're going to be right up here and other days you're going to be in the vault or you're going to be in the pit. But someone will help you out of there. And as long as you're not pulling other people in there with you, then that will make a great school. And it's acceptance. I think braving is just the classic thing. And I wish I'd known that more when I was in education. I discovered that afterwards. Brené Brown. Anyway, there we go.
We need to get her into schools, don't we? I think what feels to me, I mean, I obviously love Braving and Brené Brown. I use her quotes a lot, but underpinning all that is there is a psychological safety for staff within that setting, isn't there? So that it's okay to fail. It's okay to say how you really are. It's okay to be you and not to always be that best version of you. If something catastrophic has happened in the morning before you get into school, it's okay to be human. And I think if staff feel that there is trust, that there is safety, that they are seen and valued, then they're working from a place where they are safe, and therefore they can then be the best version that they can be that day. Because then we can be creative, we can be passionate. You know, we all came into teaching to share energy and the love of learning and to build up children and to enable them to be the best version of themselves. But, you know, if we're so stressed, we can't do that. And children pick that up. We know they do. We know if we walk into a classroom and we're struggling, the children go whoosh, don't they? Because they respond, they can almost sense it. So I think for what you're saying is so important. I love that, Harry. And I'm so grateful. We're out of time really, but I could talk to you for hours. I'm really grateful for you for sharing all of that. And it's a lovely perspective, and I know people will appreciate that. So thanks for coming on today.
Can I just finish with one thing? This is really important because you just touched on it at the end about in terms of the admitting that vulnerability and all that. And I think too often we in schools and other associations and other institutions, we don't admit that we're struggling. And it's so important to do so. And just to have a few trusted friends to say that to, who will then help you get out. And it is because you've got to go out there and you've got to be out there in the, opening car doors or delivering a lesson or whatever it is. But if you know you've got someone alongside you who's there sort of helping and pushing. I mean, I had the deputy head at Ardingly with Suzanne was amazing. I had some interesting challenges and low times, but that's just, it's the same as everything. We're under great pressure all the time as heads. But I mean, that helping hand, but you've got to be open to take the helping hand because schools are full of wonderful people who are there to help you. But if you don't say it and you struggle in your own, and it's the same for all pupils, and we say it to our own children as well, you mustn't struggle on your own. It's not a weakness to say, I need some help. I need to stop. I need to just to reset. I think that's really important. And one thing that comes out of this, it's just that whole message of be brave to ask for help when you need the help.
Yeah, what a great place to finish. Thanks, Harry.
Okay.
And if people want to get hold of you, obviously we'll put it in the show notes, but where would they go?
LinkedIn, Harry Hastings, and then they can email me, harry@thesherpa.pro, and website is just the same, all the W's, and thesherpa.pro, and it's there. And I can have my mobile as well, but it'd be lovely. Everyone needs a coach. And of course I'm going to say that, but gosh, I wish the guys who have helped me on this journey, and particularly now I've become a coach, have been, the too many to mention. I'm not, because people would be upset if I haven't mentioned them. But I've got 6 or 7 people I regularly turn to who I just say, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? Or what would you do? Or how? And they always come back, what do you think you should do? Because we know the answers. We just need someone to help and to prompt and to probe and to ask the right questions. And I know I'm very grateful to my magnificent 7 who have been named elsewhere, but they know who they are.
Very good. Okay, well, we'll try going again. Bye for now.
Thank you. Bye, Rowena.
Thanks for listening. I hope you took something of value from today. If you want to connect, I'm at rowenahicks.com. or I have a Facebook group, which is Preventing Teacher Burnout. So I look forward to connecting to you at one of those.